I'm just cleaning up these parts right here. I'm going to end up carrying it up somewhere to have it fixed. I just assume not get completely greasy every time I touch it. And honestly, I don't know a whole lot about starters, so I kind of want to take a look at it. I mean, I think I certainly get the principle, and I understand what they do, and kind of the mechanism by which they do it, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see it in a little more detail. It's kind of interesting. This whole piece actually sits inside the bell housing of the motor, so this part is not really exposed anywhere, which is strange because it's got this nice cover on it. I guess it's also structural. It's kind of holding everything in place. Now, I believe the whole problem with this is this gear, when it spins, is supposed to lift up and engage with the flywheel and the engine, which sits right here. I truly believe that's the issue. This piece is not lifting upward, and because of that, it's spin but not actually engage with the flywheel to try and turn the motor over. That's my it makes perfect sense to me reason, but like I said, I don't know much about starters. You think of how long some of these things sit inside your engine, turn and run and grind against one another for years and years and years. All in all, it's not in bad shape. I'm actually fairly certain I know what's wrong now that I have this thing off of here. So I believe what's happening here is, here's what I understand the theory is behind how a starter solenoid works. So there's a solenoid right here, it sits on top of the starter. I don't know if you can see this, there's actually a post right here that is hard connected into the starter itself. The way I've been starting this when it wasn't working with the key is I was taking a screwdriver and I was jumping from this lead to this lead, so connecting these two leads here, which would, as soon as I would do this, it would short, very heavy short, you know, and it would actually start the engine, right? That's the theory, that's what it would do. The reason your key isn't the switch between these two connections is because of the amount of amperage this thing draws. It would melt an ignition switch without having some gigantic switch. So what a starter solenoid does is these two posts, right, one that goes to the starter and the one that goes to your heavy gauge battery cable, basically sit here like this, okay? Let's say there's your two leads. This one's going to the starter, this one's going from the battery. And there's a small disc here. What happens is when you turn your key into the start position, there's a small lead right here. That is a very small electrical current inside the starter solenoid. And there's a disc. A solenoid is just a device that actuates. There's a disc, a metal disc, and when you turn your key, that metal disc lifts up and makes contact with those two items, thereby letting current flow all the way through the two leads, from one lead across that disc to the other. So that's kind of how a starter solenoid works, okay? You let go of the key and then this thing drops down, but at that point it's already started and your starter is now disengaged. Turn your key, that's kind of what happens. There's another way to do it. If this disc is broken, right, or not working, you can take a screwdriver and short these two. That's what I've been doing. I believe my issue is this. That, I'm guessing, is a problem. That thing is broken loose or something. It shouldn't be that loose, I can't imagine. But before I go take it up to a parts house and have it tested, I'm going to put the nut back on here and I'm going to take it up there and just verify my theory and what I think makes sense. My troubleshooting here I've done. But I believe that's likely what's going on. So I might actually not need a starter itself. I might just need a solenoid. The part that I'm unaware of is at the end of this starter is a large gear. And what happens is your motor has a giant gear that sits right here on the flywheel. When you hit that start button, this small gear right here actually moves forward. It engages forward. Let's see if I can. When you turn your key, this gear, see how it's moving? This gear pops forward, it engages with the flywheel and starts to turn your motor over.
And what makes that gear actually pop forward is a larger solenoid inside of the starter solenoid itself. So what happens is right here on the starter solenoid, when you apply that power to it with the ignition key, as I mentioned, it fires a solenoid to push the gear forward in this direction, which engages with that flywheel.
So there's the out position, and it's moving all the way in and turning around. I can feel, it's almost like the end of a hex nut. If I turn it in a little bit and then turn while I'm pulling out, it'll snap to the next section and pop out. So that certainly does not seem right. I'm guessing that's going to be a major part of my issue here. So I'm going to screw that thing on and take this sucker up to the parts house and see what they have to say. I got my new starter. I actually took this, the old starter, into just an auto parts store. I went to O'Reilly's. The guy that was working there couldn't really figure out how to test it, but it really had nothing to do with the starter. It had more to do with the guy. I took it over to AutoZone, and they were able to put it in the machine and test it. He tested it. Basically failed all 3 tests that it runs on it. And as soon as he hit it, you know, you could actually see the starter gear actually turn. And there was a guy standing behind me. He's like, "That starter's shot. That thing shouldn't wind up that slowly. It should start at, you know, full speed." So I went ahead and asked what the price was on one. Only $111. This is I think it's got a 1-year warranty, which, you know, 1-year lifetime. It doesn't really matter much on this. I'd figure on a boat, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one on. I'm going to have this one rebuilt. It looks like it's about $50 or $75. I can have it rebuilt. I'll do that. I'll keep it as a spare. So I'm about to unbox this one. The good news was when I brought this starter in AutoZone, on the back side of the starter is actually a Delco part number. So it's an AC Delco starter. You know, they cross-reference the number. They didn't have it in stock. They could get it 2 days later, and here we go. So it does have a slightly different shape to the starter body itself. I'm assuming all the mounting holes are going to be the same. I'm going to check that now. So I already see something that doesn't really look right, and that is it appears to be 180 degrees from the other one. I'll show you why I say that. Here's the old starter. The solenoid sits on top. Gear is right there. Here's the new one. Solenoid on top. Gear sits right there. So that means that if this were to work, it would have to sit in this configuration, which I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, I could make do if I had to, but I'm not thrilled with that. I have my new starter. I think I was just showing you guys a moment ago. The fact that it kind of sits opposite the other one, which really, frankly, sucks because it's going to make the solenoid much less accessible. I'm going to put it in because I kind of want to take the boat out tomorrow, but I might go online and see if I can find another one that has the opposite layout. I'm just not a huge fan of, honestly, this layout. So what's going to end up happening is this is going to essentially sit like this. Possibly accessible, not great. It's much nicer when the solenoid was right on the top. You can lean down and see what was going on, but it's going to be more like that. So it's at this point in the video where I mounted the starter back in. I knew it was going to be 180 degrees off from the old one. Got the bolts all on there. And then I went to hook the wires up, and the main battery cable, the thick one, that was plenty long enough to reach the position. However, the other 2 wires that come off of the wiring harness were not long enough to reach that position with the starter solenoid in a different location. I could have cut and extended them, but honestly I didn't want to mess with the good wiring that was on the Perkins wiring harness from the factory. So it's at this point that I take it back apart, pull that starter back out, and I went to my own computer here, just pulled up the AutoZone website, and I put in the Delco Remy part number from the back of the old one, and it pulled up a different part number for me. So I think the guy just fat-fingered in the wrong number or something. By all the pictures online, it does look like the one that I looked up is actually the right one, not the one that they looked up. It does appear to have the starter solenoid oriented at the top, and the gear has, you know, the gear opening to attach to the flywheel seems right. Of course, Murphy's Law looks identical, except for the fact that it's 180 degrees over, or 150 degrees over, whatever it is. But instead of $111, it's $189, so it's, you know, 70 bucks more or whatever. But listen, at the end of the day, I don't care. I want the right starter. I want the one that is absolutely the right replacement. So with that, put this thing back in the box. Went back up to the place I got it. Got the new starter in, so we're gonna compare it and see if it looks like it's the right one. Since obviously this is an area where I've not had the greatest of luck, but like any morning project, this one requires a little bit of coffee. So Pot of water on, make some oatmeal, and a little coffee, be set to go. So I've got the new starter here. Yeah, ain't exactly lightweight. So let's take a look, shall we? So first thing you'll notice is the orientation of this one is correct. When it sits in the motor, it goes from about 2 o'clock down to 7 o'clock, the opening of this gear case. That's just the way I happen to look at it. But the nice thing is the starter solenoid is on the top. So it's accessible, it's in the same location, the pre-made wires from the Perkins harness will fit on it, and we should be good to install this little booger. So I think I'm going to hop in the engine room. I'm going to go ahead and get this at least finger tight bolted to the engine, and by that time my coffee water ought to be ready. Make me some coffee. So the other thing I went ahead and decided to do was I picked up a remote start button. During all these troubles with the starter, it was kind of a pain. I'd have to run down to the engine room, take a look at something, go up top, turn the key, try and start it, wouldn't work, come down, check something, and kept kind of running back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mount this remote start button inside the engine room. So all I have to do is turn the key on up top, and I can either turn the key to start the engine, or from down in the engine room I can just push this button, and as long as the key's on, then the motor will start. So I'm going to mount this somewhere down in the engine room. I don't know exactly where, but you can kind of see it's a pretty simple little device. Just has 2 leads on the back, one to go from the power, one to go to the start solenoid tab, and then a good waterproof solid button. So off we go to the engine room. Alright, here we are in the engine room again. Got the starter, and I'm going to hop on down here and see if we can get these finger tight at least. Alright. One tight. Alright, got the 3 starter bolts in. It's held together on there. I'm going to go out and fix myself my cup of coffee and then come on in here and wire up the ignition switch. Alright, coffee's in the French press, so just time to start checking things out here. Got some wire for my remote start button. I'm thinking I might be able to go right through the edge of this panel. For now, I may just wire it, test it out, but not actually physically install it. So, got some wire here. What I'm going to do is run this right along a few others we have here. Alright, got the button wired on the button side, and I'm going to kind of go over here to this side now. If you didn't see part 1, these are those little Chids kickboards or something like that for a pool, you know, for swimming in the pool. They are phenomenal for setting on top of an engine or something when you need to get in there. I wedged this right on top of the water muffler and right on the back side of the transmission, and I can rest my leg on and kind of wedge myself into a corner without, you know, if I did that on the actual bell housing the transmission, my knees would be sore as could be. Works great. Alright, so we've got the new starter bolted in here. We did have to put this spacer right here on the, between the new starter and the motor that was on the old one. And now it's just going to be a matter of connecting up our wires over here. So get done. My main power is going to go right here, and my ignition start switch is going to go down there. So as you can imagine, I will turn off the power before I get started here. So once I turn off the power, it's going to be a matter of now connecting up these wires, but I don't want to do that under power and chance shorting something out. So, here we go. You can see on the back side of the starter, I've got my small remote start button, and the larger, more permanent looking cable there is for the actual key ignition. So I'm going to tighten that up since I just have it finger tight now.
I also went ahead and attached the large battery cable too.
Well, I think that might have been a good sound. Let's go see what happens. I believe that was the sound of success. So, it's actually really not a hard job. It took me a long time to do this, mainly because of the problem with getting the wrong starter, and I didn't really want to get in this greasy area. I knew I had a little bit of oil on the bottom side of the motor, but the good news is it's in. You heard it start pretty easily. Love the remote switch. That's a little weird. That started without the key on, so I have to look into that. But, hey, how great is that? So, there we go. Hey everybody, I hope you did find this video useful. If you did, do me a favor, right down here below the corner of the screen, go ahead and click on the little thumbs up button. Please do subscribe to the channel. We'll notify you of new video postings. We try and post one about every week. We've been toying around with the idea of really trying to build a little bit of community, thinking about even doing some live feeds while we rip the teacup and do some exploratory holes in the deck of the Formosa. So thought we'd maybe get a little bit of community for other people maybe going through the same thing. I know it's helpful for me to see what it looks like before I drill a hole in my own boat. So maybe you can watch us do one in ours and make you feel better about doing yours. But again, please do share these videos. We're really trying to build up a community and really love and enjoy all the support and comments and whatnot we get from everybody. So, from the sailing vessel, Dream Chaser, safe sailing, everybody.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for weekly updates and like this video.